be a miracle if I don't fall. The answer comes. You find that you're here for something. You're here for like a specific gift, a specific medicine for the planet. And it doesn't have to be in such an extreme way as my story.
But I haven't heard from start to beginning, and there's a lot of questions I have that you went through during it. So where, actually, you know what, the first question I have is, you said in about a 2-week period is when you started getting sick.
Yeah.
You said that you were having a good life, decent life, you were making a lot of money, and then there was a 2-week period that you just kind of lost it. So I'm curious what that was like going through that transition.
That 2-week period was probably one of the hardest 2 weeks, even though there was so much more pain to come in the future. That 2-week period was definitely one of the hardest time periods because of my lack of understanding of mental illness and my not having ever experienced symptoms like that before, and then all of a sudden experiencing them is so frightening. I thought I was dying, and I thought I was going psychotic, And at that time, I still used the labels and still had my conditioned brain, my conditioned mind as like the narrator. So my only understanding was that when this happens, people basically go into asylums, that was the next step, So for me, it was terrifying because I didn't have the true soul of Josh yet to like lean on. I was still thinking in terms of the way we're taught, and so it was terrifying. And yeah, basically what happened is I went from being this jiu-jitsu dude and getting pretty much whatever I wanted and whatever I had my heart set on, and my mind set on, rather. I didn't know where my heart was back then. Basically having that stuff and those accomplishments to rest on. I was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion, Pan American champion, and I worked at Microsoft, and I had a bunch of other cool jobs and whatever, everything in the external world was like in check. And all of a sudden, like, I just started experiencing these intrusive thoughts. They were like little like thoughts of like, go kill yourself, or like go kill her, or like just like weird,
whoa,
random,
wow,
like not me, wow, where did that come from? Like, and it spiraled out of control, and thinking, oh my God, if my thoughts are me, I'm fucked up. You know? Of course, we're not our thoughts, but you don't know that before the spiritual journey. And just these random intrusive thoughts, like go jump off that building, or like just like incomprehensible, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes they would, it was just chaos going on in my head, right? And I was starting to stray away from like the normal everyday consciousness, and I was going deeper and deeper into this hole. And of course, it's turned into panic attacks and crippling depression very quickly. And within a few days, I was basically just crying 24/7 with an inability to like gather myself. It felt like the floor had been ripped off from underneath me. Like, when you see like a tablecloth and all the glasses on the table, it was just like, right? And like my whole consciousness just collapsed.
Yeah.
And so just those were the first 2 weeks.
Wow, that's crazy. So I'm curious because was there a specific thing that happened that caused that directly that 2 weeks, or was it a lot prior? I mean, was it?
I think it was a long time coming. I think I was burning the candle at both ends, with my lifestyle and my lack of respect for my body. yeah, I think there was a lot of traumatic events. Like a girl had broken up with me, and I lost my grandfather. There was a lot of trauma and like stress that was going on. But my body hit that body burden point, which is when you can have a moderately healthy individual who hits that body burden point in terms of parasite load or heavy metal load, and they go from being that functional person to basically being incapacitated. Some people find themselves waking up one day and they can't get out of bed when it comes to heavy metal poisoning. You know, they just, or Lyme's disease, they just wake up and they like can't get out of bed all of a sudden. And that's not because the illness happened overnight. We had illness transpiring over the course of years, decades, but we don't listen to the symptoms. We don't slow down. And then, you know, you hit that point where you have no option but to slow down.
So there's probably, I mean, it would be safe to say that most of us are fairly toxic.
For sure. Yeah,
and
for sure.
Is it, so like, I look at my heroes or something, for example, and I always wonder, like, how do they achieve, they're still able to achieve great things, yet they're probably still fairly toxic? Or is there some people who just aren't as toxic as others?
I think there's just so many different variables, right? So the first thing is like, it's epigenetic. So we take on our parents' toxins, right? And we take that on in many different ways, right? Just from being in the womb, we're taking on toxins. And then from drinking our mother's breast milk, we take on all of the toxins that she has. So from an epigenetic standpoint, we're taking on our parents' toxins, and more than just the toxins is like the spiritual karma, all of the junk, all of the faulty blueprints of life that, all of the years and years and years and generations of do this, do that, don't do this, you suck, you're not rich enough, you're not good enough, basically conditioning, right? And we kind of, all that gets fused into us at a really, really young age. So it's a super complex question that you ask, because first of all, you have to look at what is your hero doing, right? And there's a lot of really successful people out there who aren't necessarily the happiest. They say never meet your heroes, right? Because when you meet them, you'll be disappointed. And so there's a lot of people who are able to function very highly from the mind, and accomplish and make money and stimulate and do all that sort of stuff. But that, to me, that doesn't transpire, that doesn't equate to like being the best you can be in this lifetime. I think the best we can be, is living in that heart space, giving back to the planet, loving, right? Being a pure vessel of consciousness. So I think it's totally possible to be super accomplished and be sick, quote unquote. When I say sick, I mean spiritually.
Yeah.
And then, furthermore, there's a lot of people are very toxic and not even operating at their full potential, right? So like a cool example is a guy like Tony Robbins, who recently got mercury poisoning, and he was just he's been talking about it on his podcast. He was saying how difficult it is. He's been detoxing for 9 months.
Wow.
So you have this like unbelievably badass dude,
yeah,
who's just doing amazing things in the world, who starts suffering from metal poisoning and says, oh wow, like this shit is serious, right? Like you cannot overcome this with mind, with thought, so a long answer to your question is, I think some of the people that we conventionally view as successful are not the success that I want, that I strive for.
Yeah.
Right? And then B, I think a lot of people are dealing with this on a smaller level. I think it's not happening to such an intense degree like it happened to me, but I think a lot of people are finding themselves uninspired, lonely, addicted to substances or internet, lack of sex drive, lack of connection, so I think people are suffering on average, so I think it's it's a very complex roots to this massive virus that we're dealing with as a society and as a species, but I think that heavy metals and parasites are the common roots in all of them.
Yeah, that definitely answers my question because I was curious about for people who are not as sick as you. Like I've never like considered myself to be sick. I always considered myself to be healthy, but there's always been this underlying sort of like lack of energy and lack of motivation that I always wondered if there was something going on, if there was something else. And as I started experimenting with diet and stuff, I just think I'm starting to uncover that it's toxicity, that's at least a mild form of it. So it sounds to me like a lot of people can relate who are just not nearly as sick as you, but also just have sort of like something's missing, like something doesn't feel right all the time, and we need to medicate with caffeine and alcohol and whatever else.
For sure. And people are living lives that they're working for other people for the most part,
Yeah.
And they're not living their true purpose, and that hurts, that hurts on a soul level. But yeah, for sure, I think most people are dealing with toxicity in one form or another. And I think just like in the movies, like Limitless and like The Matrix and all these movies that point in the direction that we have an ability to access more of our minds, we're only accessing 10%. Honestly, that could be a low estimate, and what's available to us, the other 90%, how do we access it? How do we get there? And I think it's a combined effort of detox and the spiritual journey, because, it's not just about detox, but what I'm seeing in the world today is that people are getting very lost in the spiritual journey. People are doing yoga, they're meditating, they're following all of these different instructors and gurus and whatnot, not understanding that they are their own guru, that the whole objective of this journey is to access your inner guru, your inner God, whatever you want to call it, your highest self.
Mm-hmm.
And when you access that, you don't need to listen to anyone ever again. So, it's that dog. So what I'm seeing in the spiritual journey is that people are getting lost, with ayahuasca, with hallucinogens, with all these plant medicines. People are really getting lost, and part of the reason is because of just mass marketing appeal, how ayahuasca has taken over like the marketplace, and said, oh, like cure your depression, one sip of ayahuasca,
Yeah.
But part of it is because we're so toxic that the spiritual practices are for null, that we're climbing uphill with all these spiritual practices. When if you detox with the spiritual practices, you basically start, cutting or releasing that anchor. The toxins, in my opinion, are that constant anchor grabbing the ocean floor, just like sucking you down. You're like trying to meditate, trying to stretch, trying to love yourself, and this anchor is just constantly weighing yourself down. So the detox is like little guys at the bottom of the ocean, like lifting up that anchor, eventually cutting it away.
Wow.
And that's when the spiritual practice becomes like, oh, like, why would I ever want to do anything but stretch today? Why would I want to do anything but lay in the grass today?
Yeah.
It doesn't require effort. It just that's what you want to choose. You know what I mean? Or like, why would I eat pastries? You know what I mean? And these aren't pastries, by the way. These are homemade Detox Dudes approved brownie bites.
The stamp of approval.
Sugar-free.
Detox Dudes.
Yeah.
So we'll get back to I want to get back to your story, but
okay.
I do have a quick question about on this subject. What you're talking about, you mentioned purpose, and I think that's a huge thing that people talk about a lot. I know it was big in my journey. I was always curious what my purpose was. And do you think it's easier for people to find their purpose after they've detoxed and after they've had that spiritual sort of...
Absolutely. I think when you connect with the divine and you connect with your inner true self, your inner child, Tony Robbins says, and I don't know if he created this statement, but it's heal the boy and the man will appear. And when you go deep into your psyche and you travel, deep into your past and what ails you, what really ails you, like if you can strip away all the bullshit, strip away all the noise of the fancy cars, the women, the bills, and the beer, and all, you strip away all the text messages and the Facebook, and you can just like sit and talk to yourself and say like, what do you want, Josh? Like, what do you want? Who are you? Who am I? Like, Colin, what is it that you want, Colin? You look at yourself in the mirror in one of those times when everything is stripped away. The answer comes. The answer comes. You find that you're here for something. You're here for like a specific gift, a specific medicine for the planet. And it doesn't have to be in such an extreme way as my story, you know? It doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to be throw itself into your face, like, you know, basically present itself, you know, like that. You
like
know?
an ultimatum.
Yeah, like no choice, you know. But to a lesser degree, you know, you can still access that piece of yourself that is here for something, you know, the soul.
Yeah.
Can we take a break? I need a jacket.
Yeah.
I'm freezing.
For sure. And I actually had a specific question. This is a very personal question to me. Maybe other people out there will resonate with it. But my question is like, because I feel like I've done a fair amount of work on my childhood past and my working on traumas and, you know, limiting beliefs and just going down that personal development path. And I've gotten somewhere. I mean, it's made a difference, but I feel like it hasn't made much of, for the amount of time that I've put into it, it hasn't. I still feel very, I don't seem to feel as powerful as I should, given all that attention to like awareness, and maybe I just haven't done it enough, but I'm curious, you know, do you think that like that stuff on its own isn't quite enough? Do you think detox is the missing component, or?
I think detox definitely brings us into that trauma and into that those childhood issues. When you're detoxing, it's crazy actually. When I was in the Amazon jungle drinking ayahuasca, and this was pretty common actually for people drinking ayahuasca, is you would be in the middle of a ceremony, you'd be reliving a traumatic experience from your childhood. For me, I remember getting beat up by this like kid who was like 6 feet tall when I was like 7 years old. He was like a giant, and well, not that I was tough. He didn't need to be that big, but he like choked me with his hands like he was gonna kill me. And I totally blocked that memory out of my consciousness. And drinking ayahuasca, I relived that experience and was like, oh my God, you know, wow, good, you know, I'm so sorry, Josh, that you had to deal with that. Processed it, like put it in a different filing cabinet. You know, it was in that filing cabinet of like, don't ever look here, you know. And ayahuasca, which we can get to at some point, as well as detox, kind of forces you to open that filing cabinet, read what's inside, and then allows you to like put it into a different cabinet, a different filing cabinet from a better place. So, you know, what happens is you know, for me, when I was in the ceremony, I would actually experience it and then process it and then take a huge dump. Like a huge dump that was like not, you know, definitely sitting there for somewhere in my intestines for a long time, like pocketed somewhere, you know what I mean? So I think everything is intertwined, all of our traumatic experiences. I think that you have to work through those while detoxing for the optimal like benefit, you know? And yeah, I think you know, ultimately you want to be in a safe space with safe people when you're detoxing, and you want to be, you know, maybe have a therapist or some type of spiritual guide on board that can bring it out of you, you know. But I find that just being out in nature without the stimulation is enough for most people to kind of have it brought out. Does that make sense?
Have it brought out
the trauma, your old trauma to come up to the surface, especially when detoxing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's almost like nature is your guide.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
For sure.
So one could potentially do to detox and end up spending a lot of time in nature and gradually work through a lot of their.
Absolutely. It's all interlinked. So like, you know, you're not going to really start detoxing super intensely until you actually resolve a lot of your issues, because your body is like, if you're spiritually, energetically like shut, closed off, like holding on, grasping, you're not gonna release. You know, that feeling or that place that you can get into where things happen and you're like, okay, like that's okay, let's move forward. You know, that place that sometimes some people live there, some people have never touched it, but it's like something bad happens, okay, that's all right, let's flow, let's keep going. When you can get into that place, detox becomes a lot smoother, right? Because these fearful thoughts arise, fearful memories, and you're just like, oh, like, okay. You know, and the best remedy is like, I love you, you know, like, I love you, Josh, sorry you had to deal with that, I love you. And then, you know, process, flush, cleanse. You know, sometimes I've had situations like that where I'm going crazy, I'm freaking out, you know, and I'll be walking the streets trying to calm myself down, walking in the park, and all of a sudden I resolve it or I calm down, I go to the bathroom and parasites come out, you know.
Wow.
So it's all interlinked. The physical, psychological, mental, spiritual, it's all one big tapestry that you can't really resolve one without the other. And they happen in correlation, they happen at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So you could one person could choose to go on one path, and if they made it, like if they could, let's say somebody chose to go on a detox path, and they also chose to, you know, resolve any childhood stuff or any past traumas that came up while they were on the detox path, then that would essentially lead them through that resolution almost on its own.
Yeah, well, it's always good to have like friends and guides and, you know, and whatever, specialists on board, but like, you know, you can resolve a lot of stuff just by detoxing and spending some time with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or somebody just to talk to, even who's been down the path. Like somebody in the detox community who's gone, you know, who's maybe a year ahead of that person.
Yeah.
That's done it successfully.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Let's see what else I have. So I'm curious.
I'll let you run the show.
Yeah. About. I mean, I'm very fascinated with ayahuasca. And that seems to be a big part of your. That was a big part of your journey. And there was something in you that you just were called to it. Like you did a lot of research on holistic healing, and you're really called to ayahuasca. And I know you have a lot more to say on it, and I don't even really have any specific questions. I'm just very curious about hallucinogens and like what it is, and you know, I think there's a lot of people out there who are also curious about how the healing process is through that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Ayahuasca and other hallucinogens are really powerful, really powerful modalities to access different spaces of your own consciousness, of universal consciousness. And like anything, a knife can be used to kill someone, or a knife could be used to cut these beautiful brownies, right? So it's a tool, and it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. So there's a lot of thoughts I have on ayahuasca after this crazy journey, and 30 ayahuasca ceremonies, all while having an extremely mercury toxic body. So I think these medicines, mushrooms, ayahuasca, I think natural medicines could be placed in like one category, and then you have like LSD and stuff like that. It's different though, and like MDMA. But like natural medicines like mushrooms and peyote and, you know, San Pedro, which is mescaline, and Iboga, stuff like that. I think they can all be put into like one general category of really intelligent plant spirits and powerful consciousness opening tools. The problem, I'll talk about the good side of hallucinogens first, right?
Okay.
They're really amazing to shed the conditioned mind. They're really amazing at being able to like touch and see that other world, that spirit world, that actually, as you access it, it actually seems more familiar than everyday waking consciousness. Like, if you've ever done mushrooms, like, you actually, and we talked about this once before, you actually felt like it was such a place that you've known before, right? As you were connected with, I forget what it was, like the rainbow, or the deer took you somewhere,
yeah.
right? And your mushroom experience with your friends, and time stopped, and that feeling seems so not foreign. Like, it seems so much more familiar than everyday waking consciousness. And so these plant medicines have a way of allowing you to access that piece that's been missing, that everything is interconnected. If you lose, I lose, right? If you win, I win. If you get hurt, I get hurt, right? We are all one. That concept is so hard to understand in everyday waking consciousness when you're trying to pay the bills and you're trying to, fight for your life like most people are doing.
Yeah.
But when you take a break, and when you're in those hallucinogenic experiences, and you connect to the divine and to the living air, that living, breathing universe, right? When you connect to all of it and you see how much of life is alive with you, working for you, you can shift your paradigm. You can make drastic life changes because of that. You can say, okay, I'm quitting this fucking job after an ayahuasca journey, whereas after a few months of detox, maybe not quite as clear, right? So these tools, these plants, they crack open that filter, right? Because our minds are these filters that are basically keeping us grounded in this reality, allowing us to live in this 3D world. But those filters can be changed, or like replaced. And these plant medicines have a way, some more gentle than others, just cracking that filter open and allowing all of it to come in, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to integrate the experience, right? But so the benefit and the amazing thing is that people can make really drastic life and consciousness changes, and just stop living from that conditioned place once they feel it, right? Because when you experience something, you're less likely to go back to the old way, right? When you crack open to a mushroom experience and you see that, wow, these birds are like so amazing, and these trees are breathing, and everything's alive around me. It's hard. It's possible, but it's hard to go back to like working in a cubicle and like, and hating your family or like hating your friends or like hating other people or taking, right?
Yeah.
Versus giving. So it's an amazing tool. It's an amazing way of connecting to that divine, connecting to the other worlds, the other realms. But I think it's being misused today. I think people are disrespecting and not treating it as serious as it needs to be treated. Because we're dealing with something as fragile as our minds, right? We look at people with terrible schizophrenia or just awful mental illness, which, by the way, a lot of it has to do with metal poisoning, in my opinion. But look at those filters and how fragile they can be, right? I spent 6 days in a mental hospital and seeing real fragile people. And we're all human beings. We're fragile.
Yeah.
We can jump 20, 30 feet from the ground and we can die. We break bones. We're fragile. We get cut all the time. We're not this like machine.
Yeah.
So to be altering the body in such a way, in such a drastic way, for the wrong people in the wrong time is really, really risky.
Yeah.
And people get lost. I've seen a lot of lost people in the ayahuasca world who just drank 300, 400, 500 ayahuasca ceremonies, and they're no more bright or intelligent or connected than you or me or anyone who's never even drank ayahuasca. They're lost in their own space because it takes the human, the soul, to do the work for the real magic to happen, for the real transcendence, the real magic it comes from the human, not from the outside world. This is the grand gift, the grand lesson that we're trying to be taught all the time, every day, in every way. You are your own God. You are your own height. You have the power to do anything you want. If you want change, it's you that can do it. So these medicines blast that concept open and allow you to do it. But if you don't, and you eat unhealthy, or you don't love yourself, or you're not kind to others, basic principles of living a happy, healthy life, you'll be lost no matter how much ayahuasca you drink. So the upside, amazing tool, amazing at cleansing the body physically. Ayahuasca is a huge purgative. Iboga is a purgative. Cleansing the body, cleansing old fecal matter, old emotions, old patterns. There's nothing better in the world, in my opinion, than of really deconditioning the brain like hallucinogenic medicines. But the downside, people get lost. People are abusing it. They're not doing it in the right context with a shaman. People think that they can just buy ayahuasca on the internet and drink and take ayahuasca in their basement.
Yeah.
With their friend who's the safe, what is it called? A babysitter, right? That's the concept, the term that people use.
Yeah, I know people who have done it here in Portland, or we're planning on doing it with just a guy.
Yeah. And when you're in a ceremony and the shaman's singing Icaros to you, which are songs, there is no Westerner on the planet that has this level of intelligence and hundreds and hundreds of years of knowledge funneled into them through their parents, through the plants, through their 50 years, 20 to 50 years of studying these plants and living in communion with nature and speaking to spirits and all that stuff. So, for people to think that you can just go drink ayahuasca in your basement or with like a friend to babysit you, it's insanity, because they're a guide. You're going in an ocean with a little rowboat. The waves are big, and you have like a little rowboat, and I don't even know how to make this an analogy, but let's say you're in like a super dark, scary cave, and you're in a rowboat, and you have no idea where you're going, and you have no flashlight. The shamans are like shining their light, like, this way, hey, this way, and you're like, oh, okay, throughout the whole 6-hour experience. For you to be alone or with someone who doesn't know what they're doing, man, it's fucking cold.
No.
It's insanity. It's insanity to put your body and your being into subject yourself to that. Because you're going to get lost, you're going to have pain, you're going to have old stuff come up, and if you don't have that shaman singing to you, which the words mean nothing, it's the spiritual component of it as it's happening, you just know where to go. The shaman will tell you where to go. And so it's a journey. It's a real serious journey, not to be taken lightly. And I think it's being abused. But if you can use it in the right setting, ayahuasca, iboga, mushrooms, they're an amazing catalyst for growth. And it's similar to detox, where you have to create a way of life around it. To have one experience, that's nothing. It doesn't mean anything. It's like the experience is the tip of the iceberg. All the rest of the bulk substance comes from your everyday life and your decisions and your actions based on the knowledge of what you learned in that experience, right? Stemming from the tip of the iceberg is when you can say, like, oh, remember that mushroom experience when I realized that, like, the tree was living? Like, maybe I shouldn't cut down this tree, or maybe I shouldn't, whatever the decision needs to be made.
Yeah.
Leaning more towards nature and more towards love, kindness. That's a long answer to your question.
No, it was a great one. And I'm curious, do you planning on taking, because you obviously did it to go through your journey.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about taking it, either ayahuasca or even ibogaine, or Iboga, I think it is, which you haven't done yet, I think. Do you ever think about either of those?
I think about it, and have a lot of fear with it, a lot of fear in my heart about doing something like that again, because, I don't take my sanity for granted anymore.
Yeah.
Every day that I wake up and my mind is just like chilling in here, just like thinking about the day and thinking about like how to grow the business and thinking about my girlfriend. Like, to other people, they take that for granted. For me, I'm just like in heaven while it's happening. I'm just like, like, holy shit, wow, it feels good to be on this planet. Wow, to not hear voices and to not think these abstract, crazy, paranoid concepts. So I may hold a while longer. I think I can get to where I need to be with meditation, self-love, and detox. I honestly think we can all get to where we need to be, to whatever that end goal is, which would be different for each person, but ultimately I would hope most people would say along the lines of, love, being loving, having well-being, being happy, being safe, protected, having wealth in many different categories of life. I think we can all get there with detox, self-love. Those are the two most important. Detox and self-love. Simply loving yourself, even just saying it for as often as possible. And then, of course, meditation and some stretching. I think it's like 50% detox, 30% self-love. Detox, of course, like lifestyle goes into that, like healthy eating and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And then, what I say, 50, 30, 50, 20?
I think you said 30. I think
50, 30, and 20%
stretching.
Meditation and stretching and stuff like that.
What about exercise? Where's exercise going there?
I think the best exercise that's conducive to like a long life and conducive to like detox is stuff like gentle exercise like yoga or the 5 Tibetan rites or walking. In Chinese medicine, it all depends what your goal is, right? So like in Oriental medicine, their goal was always to live as long as possible.
Yeah.
The yogis had different intentions. They were like, they wanted to live long, but they also wanted to see what was possible with the human body, right? So it depends where your intentions lie. For me, I want to live as long as possible. And that entails in going along with Chinese medicine route of living in the middle, right? Not experiencing extremes of any kind. And then also exercising gently, right? Like getting that, there's a saying, it's like, when a baby is born, baby is soft and supple. When a man dies, he is hard and brittle. Plants are just the same. So why do we focus on all these exercises that create a hard, brittle body? It's really about creating that fluid, flowy body with yoga and stretching and, and maybe like jogging and walking and that Tai Chi, Qigong, stuff like that. So that's the kind of route that I'm on, becoming like a Zen master.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're done with weightlifting.
For sure.
Interesting. It's always been, I think that's a fascinating answer because I've always wondered about like this hardcore, and I hear a lot about high intensity exercise, not intermittent, but like working out as hard as you can and then stopping and resting and then doing that. I've heard that a number of times as that does all sorts of stuff to our physiology, creates more brain cells. I don't really know what it does, but like just it's good for us is what I've heard.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that kind of exercise?
Like high interval?
Yeah, like really high intensity interval training, like sprinting.
I think that's good. I think sprints are good. I think where it starts to become a problem is like going to the gym and lifting weights, like high weight, I think it depends whenever your intentions are like, I want to look good, I want my body, like that, I don't find those to be like the best intentions. That's not where I'm at. Like, like looking good is great, but like feeling good is so much better. You know what I mean?
And you probably look better when you feel better.
Good. Yeah. Honestly, all the most like badass like people, when I like, being a jiu-jitsu fighter, I've been able to like just look at someone and know if they've really connected with their body, like connected at a deep level. and if they are intact with all their limbs, and if they can like really just beat the shit out of someone or not.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of get this third eye for that sort of stuff when you fight.
Uh-huh.
And all the most badass people that I can see and that are physically intimidating in that way, they never are bulky. They're never strong physically, like biceps, triceps, chest. It's never like that.
They're not like
They're
underwear
like
models.
they're like yoga dudes who like train jiu-jitsu, who are skinny, but like you look at them and you're just like, oh shit, like something like he could fuck me up. You know what I mean?
Wow, that's
yeah.
that's very fascinating.
So yeah, I think that's the route. You know,
yeah,
to like be super in touch with your body and your limbs and connected, and you know, I don't see like lifting, bench pressing to come into that category. You know?
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Curious about what your thoughts are. You know, because you've done, you've seen the other side through, like ayahuasca and stuff, and actually, first question is, who do you recommend doing that? Like, who do you think is ready for that kind of stuff, and who do?
I think there's certain symptoms that I would say are congruent with someone who's not ready for ayahuasca. And I think panic attacks. I think severe panic and instability and severe mood swings are types of symptoms that are, people with those symptoms are not ready for ayahuasca, in my opinion. I think when you have depression, fatigue, lethargy, stuff like that, lack of motivation, stuff like that, I think people like that are pretty much ready for, hallucinogens if they feel called to it. I'll never get in the way of spirit in that sense. Like, if you feel called to it, for sure. But, of course, I think detox should be the first step for everybody, right?
Yeah.
I'll make that blanket statement because I think you can get 100 times more out of the plants when your body's clean than you could before it's clean. Of course, you can make the argument that seeing what you see in a hallucinogenic experience will make you more motivated to clean your body. Kind of goes hand in hand. I think for me, my personal journey, it was all needed to create, like, forge this warrior, right? To like forge this disciplined warrior that I feel like I am now. I feel that all of the plants were essential for that. But for I think, my story is a little unique and crazy, but
why do you think it was essential for you? I'm curious.
When you're drinking ayahuasca consistently, you get punished. The rate at which the lessons come in are enhanced times 100. So like, if you do a poor action, if you say something bad about someone, or if you do something bad, the karma, that time frame in which it comes back to you, can sometimes be minutes, days. Whereas here, in this life, it's a little slower. It sometimes takes weeks or years. When you're drinking ayahuasca, it's all accelerated. So you catch the bad decision and the poor action. You catch it within minutes or hours or days. It's hyperspeed.
Whoa.
In terms of like the lessons from the universe.
Yeah. Is that while you're on your trip, or is that?
As long as you're in the jungle drinking ayahuasca once a week or even once every 2 weeks, the medicine is with you that whole time. The medicine stays with you for years to come. But when you're in that jungle, when you don't have internet, when you're just full boot camp ayahuasca, yeah, you're on it. The whole thing is one big ayahuasca trip.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
fucking crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.